what do you do when you have to tell your kids that you're getting a divorce? It's like one of the hardest, most uncomfortable conversations that you may ever be in.
Yeah.
And my kids were 8, 6, and 4 when I had to tell them that we were getting a divorce. And you had 2 babies, basically.
Mine were 2 and 4. And then I got the opportunity to have another conversation with them for my second divorce when they were 14 and 16.
Yeah. So you had
2 very different conversations.
Right. But what we really learned was, like, I went to my therapist.
Right.
I brought my
Totally.
ex-husband to my therapist so that we would know the right way to tell our kids. She didn't even know my kids. She'd never even met my kids, but she just gave us some rules of thumb, just 100% make sure you tell them we love you.
Right.
Just because we are not going to be married anymore doesn't mean that dad doesn't love you and I don't. Well, anyway, that's the wrong way to say it. You just keep reinforcing the positive and not the negative. So
Right.
Mommy loves you. Daddy loves you. That's never going to change. We're always going to be your mom and dad. We're just not going to be together. Mine were 8, 6, and 4. And I had like a whole day planned. Do you even remember what I did that day?
I don't.
I don't know where I got the superpower, but we lived about a 45-minute walk from town and we had a dog. So I had planned, I told him, because it's like honeymoon stage, so he was kind of doing whatever I said. We're going to tell the kids, we're going to give them a big hug. We're doing it together. We're each speaking. So it's not like mom said,
Right.
we're getting a divorce, or dad said we're both relaying the message. And then we walked into town with the dog and we got ice cream. And my stomach was churning the entire time. And I'm not really sure that was the best way to do it, because it's not a light conversation. Like, does that remove, the seriousness of the conversation?
No, I don't think so. I think that kids have to take things in bite-sized pieces, no pun intended. I think that it all has to obviously be very age appropriate. I think in any ideal situation, and I know that this isn't an option for everyone, but I do think the ideal situation is to be able to sit down together and talk to your kids together, as opposed to having such an acrimonious situation that one of you decides to sit down with the kids and tell them that a divorce is coming and your spouse is not there. I think that is a lot harder on the kids. And I think most experts that we've spoken to have agreed that if you are able, having a joint conversation together, and I don't think that the fact that you went out and had ice cream afterwards lessens the impact, because my kids were 2 and 4. I literally remember my son or my daughter was on a rocking horse, literally on a rocking horse, like barely listening. And my son was playing with his Matchbox cars. I don't think either of them were even looking at us, but we were looking at them and we were saying to them, we'll still always be a family. We're just not going to live together anymore. Like, you won't, you're still going to have, it's still going to be the same. We're still going to have the same people in our lives, type of a thing.
But what you were saying, like, they probably only took in like 2 words of everything that we like all take so much time to plan. So the big message that we have learned since that is that it's not a one-time conversation. There's the first for anything, especially after divorce, is always really hard and scary. And these are your kids, but you're not going to, they're going to be okay. You're not going to wound them unless you also are the spouse that's shit talking your ex and being like, we're getting a divorce. Your father did this, or we're getting a divorce. Your mother did this. No matter
how bad your situation
don't do that.
Please don't do that.
Don't do that.
But I will say, one of the biggest mistakes that I made, that I honestly didn't realize until 10 plus years later, was the fact that because my kids were so young, and because their lives, while impacted greatly, were not impacted greatly, because we had the same nanny who was still taking them to school and bringing them back to whichever house they were supposed to be at. And like, we had a lot of pieces of the lives that thread together that allowed a great sense of consistency in their lives. And so I mistakenly felt like no news is good news. the kids seem really well adjusted. The going back and forth, we lived very close together. Whether they were going back to my apartment after school or his apartment after school really didn't seem like that big of a deal. My nanny and we always made sure they had everything they needed at whichever apartment they were going to. And I regret now not broaching the subject every so often over the
like
years.
a check-in.
Right. And instead feeling like, well, if they're not asking me or saying anything to me, then they must be okay. Knock on wood, I think mostly they are. But I think that if you're watching and you're, in that situation, you really should be checking in, because they may not know to bring something up. They may not know that they're feeling a certain way about it.
And it might hit them at a random time. Like we were at the pool, and the way it always worked at the pool is all the dads went in the pool with the kids and the moms sit outside because we don't want to get our hair wet. We don't want to walk around in our bikini and have like stuff hang out or be like scrutinized. And I was still taking my kids to the pool. And my daughter's like, I don't want to go in the pool. My dad's not here. I don't want to go in the pool. So I think, to Jessica's point, is when you have the conversation, and if you miss it, then you can always bring it up again. The lines of communication always have to be open with your kids. They have to know that they can come to you with any question. And you can say, I may not have all the answers. And this is new for me too. Like, I've never been through divorce. I don't know how to co-parent, but I'm going to do the best I can to answer your questions. And you can come to me with anything. And my kids have certainly come to me with a lot of stuff that has like made my heart stop. And I didn't really know how to respond, but then I just did.
You just figure it out.
You fucking figure it out.
A learning,
right.
We're all in a learning process, but it is important when you initiate the conversation, if you're not in therapy and you haven't met with someone to talk about it, use the right words, use age appropriate words and phrases and terminology. Only tell them the necessary information,
right?
Which is
Don't
like where they're going to be sleeping and how that's going to work logistically in the simplest of terms,
right?
And leave it there. And that's just the initial conversation. And then whether it's later that day, later that week, later that month, depending on their ages, you can pick up with additional information about how things are going to work. But you don't want to overwhelm them. You just do want to make sure that you're asking how they're doing, because I just assumed that mine were always doing fine.
And your kids are fine. But kids say the darndest things and they ask the darndest questions. So let them just ask questions.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to say something and then they're like, oh no, I don't know. What does that mean? Another thing I would highly suggest is that you tell their teachers.
Yes.
When they're in school, because they're not with you all day. And as it turns out, my oldest was in like second grade and her teacher became like one of her most loved women in her life. She actually did a project about her when she graduated. And so tell their teachers, they lead with empathy. They're not you. They're not in your house. They're a safe space for your kids to talk. And so just keep the lines of communication open and let the people know who they're around, so they know they have another place to go, another person to talk to.
Even in addition to that, like having your kids' teachers or, principal or guidance counselor or whoever know, they don't even have to initiate conversations, but it also lets them know that if they're seeing any different behavior from your kids,
right,
that they may not have even thought about or may not have noticed otherwise, it gives them the opportunity to kind of keep an extra eye out on your kid and let you know if there's anything kind of going on behind the scenes that you wouldn't see because it's at school. So it is important to, it takes a village, and it's our job to kind of set up the village and create the village around ourselves and around our children, so that they know who they can come and talk to.
Yeah.
And so that they, everyone is helping to take care of them and pitch in and look after them.
Yeah.
But telling your kids is a very scary prospect. And I know a lot of times people try to put it off because they don't know what to say and they don't know how to say it. And I promise you that as the parent of your own children, you will do it right. Whatever you say, however you do it, that's going to be the right thing for you and your kids.
Totally.
Just continue to have the conversations sporadically or periodically over time so that you can make sure that you keep, emphasizing the right message.
Yeah. So I'm TH and this is Jessica. We founded X Experts so that we can help you through your divorce and everything beyond. And this is Divorce Etc. on YouTube. We'll see you next time.